And so when we'd turn off funding to a fraudulent NGO, we'd get complaints from whatever, the 10% of Republicans who were receiving the money. And they would, they would very loudly complain. Because the honest answer is the Republicans are partly, they're receiving some of the fraud too. They're getting a vig.
Elon Musk's latest appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience was, as usual, a curious blend of comedy, alarmism, and unfiltered technocratic confidence. Between sips of whiskey and the faint hum of Rogan's skeptical, Musk launched into what he described as one of the biggest scandals hiding in plain sight: massive fraud within the Social Security Administration's database. And, true to Musk form, he claimed to have the fix ready, if only the politicians would get out of the way. According to Musk, the root of the problem lies in how the United States uses the Social Security number as a national ID, even though it was never meant to serve that purpose.
That's the nature of the scam. It's a bank shot. So then the rebuttal from the Dems is like, oh, well, the vast majority of the people who are marked as live in the Social Security Administration weren't receiving Social Security Administration payments. That is true. What they forgot to mention is they're getting fraudulent payments from every other government program. And that's why the Dems were so opposed to turning off, to declaring someone dead who was dead, because it would stop the entire all the other fraud from happening.
And so, but all this, is it trackable? Like all this other fraud, if
totally
they
trackable.
wanted to, they could chase it all down.
Yeah, it's not even hard.
And yet they're opposing chasing it all down.
They're opposing chasing it all down because it turns off the money magnet for the illegals.
Wow.
Because it's very logical to like I'm saying the most common sense things possible. If someone's got a birthday in Social Security that is an impossible birthday, meaning they are older than the oldest living American or were born in the future, then you should call them and say, excuse me, we seem to have your birthday wrong because it says that you're 200 years old. That's all you need to do.
He painted a picture of a broken system where millions of ghost identities, people long dead or somehow not yet born, continue to linger in federal databases. These phantoms, he said, open the door for large-scale fraud across countless government programs tied to the SSN. His proposed fix? Start with the obvious. Remove anyone whose birth date suggests they are 150 years old or born in 2097. It's bureaucratic house cleaning, not rocket science, which for Musk is a refreshing downgrade in complexity. Where things got more politically charged was Musk's claim that Democrats actively resist cleaning up this data. His reasoning was that correcting the SSA's ghost records would block billions of dollars that, in his view, flow toward illegal immigrants and corrupt intermediaries. A major Democratic funding ecosystem, he suggested. He called Democrats the soft crime party, asserting that chasing fraud threatens their support networks.
Well, you were very reluctant last time you were here to talk about the extent of some of the fraud, because you're like, they could kill me because this is kind of...
What I'm saying is that if you create... to be pragmatic and realistic, you actually can't manage to zero fraud. You can manage to low fraud number, but not to zero fraud. If you manage to zero fraud, you're going to push so many people over the edge who are receiving fraudulent payments that the number of inbound homicidal maniacs will be really hard to overcome. So I'm actually taking, I think, quite a reasonable position, which is that we should simply reduce the amount of fraud, which I think is not an extremist position. And we should aspire to, have less fraud over time. Not that we should be ultra draconian and eliminate every last scrap of fraud, which I guess would be nice to have, but we don't even need to go that extreme. I'm saying we should just stop the blatant, large-scale, super obvious fraud. I think that's a reasonable position.
It's a very reasonable position.
For a man who builds reusable rockets, Musk seems just as comfortable launching verbal missiles. But Musk didn't spare the Republicans either. He emphasized that while most of the fraud, by his estimate, benefits the Democratic side, perhaps 80 to 90% of it, the remaining slice, a hefty 10 to 20%, goes straight into Republican pockets. When his so-called Doge team began turning off the taps to fraudulent NGOs and payment channels, it wasn't just Democrats who complained. Republicans, too, began to howl loudly.
While most of the fraudulent government payments to, especially to the NGOs, go to the Democrats, most of it, like, I don't know, for argument's sake, let's say 80%, not maybe 90%, 10 to 20% of it does go to Republicans. And so when we turn off funding to a fraudulent NGO, we'd get complaints from whatever, the 10% of Republicans who were receiving the money. And they would, they would very loudly complain. Because the honest answer is the Republicans are partly, they're receiving some of the fraud too. They're getting a vig.
Jesus.
Yeah, I want to be clear. It's not like the Republican Party is some
No.
ultra pure paragon of virtue here.
No.
Okay.
No. Well, you see that with the congressional insider trading. It's across the board.
Yeah.
It's left and right.
I mean, the whole uniparty criticism has some validity to it. There's so and it's like if you turn off fraudulent payments, it's not like I said, it's not like 100% of those payments were going to Democrats. A small percentage were also going to Republicans. Those Republicans complained very loudly. And that's so there was a lot of pushback on the Republican side when we started cutting some of these funds. And I tried telling them, like, well, 90% of the money is going to your opponents, but they still, even if they're getting 10% of the money,
They want their piece.
Yeah, they want their piece.
And they've been getting that piece for a long time.
Yes.
The Republicans, in his telling, want to appear righteous, railing against corruption and government waste, but not if it means losing their own cut. It's a cynical but consistent theme in Musk's worldview. Institutions are corrupted by incentives, and once the gravy train starts rolling, everyone on board forgets who built the tracks. When Musk's team began cutting off those ghost payments, he claimed the backlash was swift and vicious. Death threats spiked, political allies vanished, and the media, he said, turned him into a villain for daring to expose a bipartisan racket.
Did you think you were going to be able to get more done than you were?
We did get a lot done.
Right.
And Doge is still happening, by the way. The Doge is still underway. There's still waste and fraud being cut by the Doge team, so it hasn't stopped.
It's less publicized.
It's less publicized, and they don't have like a clear person to attack anymore.
Well, it seems like once you stepped
they're
away.
they're basically they applied immense pressure to me to stop it. So then I'm like, the best thing for me is to just cut out of this. And in any case, as a special government employee, I could only be there for like 120 days anyway, something like that. So whatever the law says. So I could only be there for 4 months as a special government employee. So, yeah, I mean, you turn off the money spigot to fraudsters, they get very upset, to say the least. But my death threat level went ballistic. It was like a rocket going to orbit. Yeah. So, but now that I'm not in DC, that I guess they don't really have a person to attack anymore.
Well, the rhetoric about you has calmed down significantly.
Yeah,
it was disturbing. It was disturbing to watch. It was like, this is crazy, and to watch these politicians engage in it, and all these people just like framing you as this monster.
From an impartial standpoint, Musk's claims are, at best, partially verifiable. The existence of outdated SSA records is real, but the scale of fraud he describes veers into speculative territory. Government watchdogs and analysts generally estimate that while fraud and overpayments do occur, they represent a small fraction of the overall budget. Still, Musk's criticism of bipartisan complacency strikes a chord. Washington's history is littered with examples of both parties quietly benefiting from the very inefficiencies they denounce on camera. In the end, Musk's narrative isn't just about fraud, it's about hypocrisy. He frames himself as a lone engineer confronting a political ecosystem that thrives on dysfunction. It's a classic Musk performance, equal parts whistleblower, provocateur, and accidental comedian. He may exaggerate, but his underlying point lands uncomfortably well, that when it comes to money and politics, even the dead keep voting, and both parties seem fine cashing their checks.